Hey guys, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. It's the middle of January and we're going to start our seeds for our spring garden. I love tomatoes. I love to grow them. I can't eat store-bought tomatoes hardly at all anymore because I've been so spoiled growing my own tomatoes. And you can grow them too, it's really easy. And I'm going to show you how today. I have 25 varieties here in my hand from different places. I'm real excited about this one here. In fact, I just watched a video of one of the guys, one of my favorite online gardeners, David the Good, and he's growing this variety too, so we'll see. But he's starting his seeds in the ground because he lives in the tropics. I live in zone 9. I have about 6 weeks to 7 weeks before my last frost date, so we're going to start them in a seed tray. What I'm using here for my growing medium is a peat moss based seed starting mix. You don't want to use any kind of potting soil. You don't want to use heavy soils or natural soil from your garden. You want to use a specific seed starting mix. It's very light and fluffy. It's basically just peat moss, and you could just use peat moss if that's all you wanted to use. This stuff is a popular commercial brand, and it has nothing but peat moss and maybe a little fertilizer they throw in there. You don't need that fertilizer. The plant is going to survive off the stored energy in the seed itself. Those two little first leaves that come up are called cotyledons, and they're filled with starchy food stored up for that plant. The ideal situation is that this is sterile, because you don't want a bunch of fungal life coming up and dampening off your plants, and we'll talk about some of those things a little bit later. But yeah, something that's clean, light, and sterile. And in a peat moss mix, you'll often find these kinds of sticks and things. Just get rid of those. Second, you need a seed starting tray. Let's talk about those. I'm going to be using these PropTech cell trays, 162 cells in this. So yeah, that's more than my basic Jiffy tray that I've used in the past. I've used these before, and I don't like them because that biodegradable bag takes about 5 or 6 years to biodegrade. I'm still digging those up in my garden. But you can use these. You can use these peat pots, although I like to peel them off when I transplant. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you can start seeds for cheap. If you use these Jiffy trays, these cheap vacuum plastic trays with these inserts, and I like these. I've used these for years. You get 72 cells in a tray if you get the right kind of tray, or you can use those peat pellets. If you buy this kind of tray though, it comes with a handy humidity dome that fits right on top. And you put that under your lights and it keeps the humidity in. These trays I'm using don't have something like this. And so what I'm going to do is use a clear trash bag, and I'm going to put these inside a clear trash bag, put that under my lights in the house. My lights give off just enough heat that these seeds will germinate inside that bag, and that bag will keep the humidity in place. I won't have any evaporation. So that's what we're going to do. But I don't have any bags on hand, so I'm going to have to go to the store. And they're clean, they're brand new, but if they had been used before, I would want to wash them real good and sterilize them. You can use chlorine bleach to sterilize them, a solution. You can use products that they sell to make these sterile. And the reason you want to sterilize them is you don't want any residue from last year's growth, last year's seed starting, or whenever you seed started last. That stuff down in there, all that residue provides a place for bacteria to grow. So you know, get yourself either a new tray, or if you've got some of these tough trays that you'll use the rest of your life, then yeah, just make sure that you get them clean and sterile. So that's what I've done. I filled it in, and there are two ways you can do this. Actually, there are several ways you can do it, but the two primary ways is I've seen people put the dry material in and then water from the bottom and let it set overnight and soak it all up. That sometimes works. It doesn't work real well for me. I've tried it on this one over here, and you can see the top is all dry, and that's soaked overnight, and I don't think that that's the method I like. That didn't work for me. They're a little damp, but I don't think that's going to work for me. So what I prefer to do is wet the material beforehand, mush it all up and get it all nice and moist, and then put it in your trays. And this one here, this medium colored one, you can see this one is ready for seeds. The other way that I've seen folks do it is put in their mix and water it all in from the top, real heavy like. And this one has been treated that way. And I think this is a little too wet, so I'm going to leave this one out to dry a bit. I'm going to water that in with my spray bottle and get the surface nice and moist. But I'm going to start planting in this one here that I pre-moistened, and this is the one I'm going to go with. What I like to do is just put a little divot in the middle of my finger like that and drop a seed or two on there. I like to use a little tray to dump my seeds out on, especially when I have so few. I've only got 10 seeds here. Real easy, just drop them into the little depression that we've made in the potting mixture, and we're good. I'm very intrigued by these dwarf varieties. They actually grow the same size fruit as you would get on the standard variety, but they grow it on a dwarf plant. This dwarf tomato project has been going on for a while. It was started in a large part by Craig LaHoulier, and I've shown you his book, I think, before. Get a hold of this book. This is the best tomato book that I've ever read. It explains everything, talks about different kinds of tomatoes, different flavor profiles, different heirlooms. It gives you their story. It talks about how to grow and propagate tomatoes. It's a really good book. Now that we have our seeds in, we need to spray them with a light mist of water, get them wet, and then we're going to put in some of this seed starting mix on top, about a 1/8 inch layer. Take all the big chunks out. Real easy stuff. Alright, now I'm going to take my seed starting mix and just very carefully dust the surface with about 1/8 of an inch. You know, some places you'll get a little more, some places you'll get a little less. Doesn't really matter. That's it. Now I'm going to water this in yet again. I'm going to also take this opportunity to clean off my tags there. Let's see. Yeah, that's good. That's nice and watered in. And if you want, you can come and tamp down each cell to get that seed in contact with the growing medium. That's usually a pretty good idea. I'm just lightly touching each one. I'm not pressing hard. I just want to make sure that there's positive contact. And this also helps spread that water into the more resistant parts of that peat moss potting mix, or seed starting mix. Alright, we're good. So our problem of not having a humidity dome on this tray can be solved with a clear plastic bag. Curtis at Renaissance Farms uses this method, and so we're going to put our tray inside of a plastic bag, and we're going to leave it for 3 days. Just like so. There we go. I'll put this under the lights, and our room will be kept about 72 degrees. The lights will make this little microclimate in here a little bit warmer, and we'll put a thermometer around our area just to see where we're at. And these will be up in 3 or 4 days. And we'll have a part 2, and I'll show you what they look like. Let's get the other one done. Nice. As this air seeps out and the weight of this bag pushes that air out, it'll settle down a bit, but we're not really concerned about that. Like I said, these are going to grow. They're going to push the plants will literally push the bag up. They will get a little bit leggy in here, but I've said before, I don't care about leggy tomatoes because I can plant them deep. So in here I have tomatoes and I have peppers. They're both from the nightshade family. Peppers take a little longer to germinate, so we may have to do some on-the-fly alterations to this system, but we're going to try it. Let's get these under the lights. Okay, at this point, light is not all that important. Heat, warmth is what you need. You can either use a grow mat, which is like a heating mat that sits under your tray, and you could grow these in the dark. Once they get up and have their first set of true leaves starting to bud out, that's when you really need to get them under the light. So my trays are a little bit larger than this grow light. This is a 6-tube T5 fluorescent tube fixture, and it has served me for many years. I would convert to LED, but hey, this still works, and it gives me the warmth I need. I don't have to have a mat. When choosing growing lights for starting seeds and for growing your seedlings indoors, there are 3 things you need to look at. Number 1, are you going to go with LEDs or are you going to go with fluorescent tubes? I would go with LEDs if I was starting fresh, but I don't have, I already have the tubes, I already have the fluorescent setup, so I'm going with that. And that's a T5 bulb. The other thing you need to look for is the lumens. Lumens is just a measure of how bright the lights are. And the brighter your growing lights are, the better they are. Plants need a 2,000 to 3,000 lumen light source. The higher you can get, the better. You can go a little bit lower than 2,000, but I strongly suggest you shop for the higher lumen. So lumen, that's just a measure of how bright the light is. The other thing you're going to look at is the Kelvin rating. Kelvin is a measure of the temperature of light, or you could just think of it as the color of the light. You know, you can buy light bulbs for your house that are those daylight bulbs or natural light bulbs, and you know, you can tell it's more yellow and homey and warm, or it's more blue, or it's more white. What you want is something that replicates daylight. And color temperature daylight bulbs in kelvins is usually between 4,500 and 6,500. Somewhere in there. 5,000 is a perfect daylight Kelvin rating. So get your 2.5 to 3.5 lumen bulb that is rated at 5.5 or thereabouts Kelvin, and you'll be fine. I use T5 fluorescent bulbs. It's a real common grow light, and it's worked for me for years. You can also use your standard work shop light. The ones above me right now are the cheap little set that I got at Home Depot, and they've just got some standard bulbs in there. They're not very bright, but in a pinch they'll work. So you really don't have to spend a lot of money, or if you want, you could spend all kinds of money and knock yourself out. But that's what you need to know about grow lights. One thing that has saved me in the past from baking my seed starts is a little thermometer. And I just keep that under there, and that gives me an idea of what the temperature is under here, so it doesn't get too high. I can raise the lights if it gets too high. But inside the bag, it's going to be a little bit warmer. We've got a little microclimate in there, but that's okay. You can see it's already starting to climb from bringing that thermometer from outside. And I'll watch it through the day until I get, I don't know, about 80 degrees. That ought to work. Okay, well there's our spring seeds started under the lights, ready to grow. As those come up, we will thin if we need to thin a little. We'll pot them up into cups and let them grow their roots out a bit before we transplant them into our garden. This is my fall garden, my winter garden. I've got kale, cabbage, cauliflower, carrots, beets, lettuce, onions, and some other stuff growing out there I don't remember. All this needs to be out by March the 1st, or that first week of March, and I need to have my tomato and pepper seedlings out here by that time. And that's 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date is your target for starting seeds. So if you live in Zone 9, Zone 9A, or even Zone 8B, right now is about the time you need to start thinking about starting seeds. You could be a little bit late. I've been very late in the past, but I'm trying to be early this year. I'm trying to be on time, actually, so I can have 3 distinct growing seasons. So I'll have a spring garden, I'll have a summer garden, and then I'll have a fall and winter garden. So I'm going to update you with a second part on how the seedlings are doing once we get them germinated, once they're up, once the system has done its job. And I'll be sure to post a video on that. Look for that in about a week to 2 weeks. And yeah, man, spring, it's here. Thanks for joining us today on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Man, we really like your comments. We really like when you subscribe to our channel. If you haven't done so, please do. And follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. I like to post a lot on Instagram, the beauty of the garden, the things that we cook out of the garden. And yeah, we'll see you there. Thanks for joining us. Happy gardening to you. Bye-bye.